Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing my October wrap up. I am so sad October is over. Mentally and emotionally it was a rough month. Stress-wise it was a little bit of a rough month, but I don't know, it's just my favorite month and I'm so sad that it's over and it just went by so fast. And my reading, it was okay. I read 24 books. And my average rating was a 3.98, so not the best average rating I've ever had in a month. We are going to do Fuck, Marry, Kill again this month. We're going through my books, the books I read. I did it for the first time last month and I had a lot of fun, so I'm going to just continue doing it for a little while. So we'll draw 3 random book titles and I'll tell you which one goes with which category, and it was interesting. Last month a couple of my favorite things that I read got killed, and it's just kind of how it worked out. I do want to tell you what my 3 favorite books of the month were, however, before we dive in, because I've been having like a really awesome reading year for nonfiction specifically. I don't know how or why, but I'm just picking really good nonfiction for myself this year, and it's just made it so fun. I read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, and this was so good. I listened to this on audio from the library, and honestly, I need my own copy because I'm sure I will want to reread it and highlight it. There were so many things that resonated with me just about the choices that we make in life and what we can control versus what we can't control, and what's worth our time and our energy and fucks and what is not. So I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. My other 5-star nonfiction, if I can find it, was Disney High. This is by Ashley Spencer. This is the untold story of the rise and fall of Disney Channel's tween empire. This goes through chronologically. It starts with the creation of Disney Channel, and then you move through different iconic Disney Channel TV shows, Disney Channel movies, and it ends with Camp Rock and the rise of Demi Lovato. So it goes through that, I guess it's a decade, 14 years, something like that, of Disney Channel really being influential to people's careers. But I was in high school, I believe, when I was watching Even Stevens, Lizzie McGuire, all those I think iconic TV shows, and I just thought Ashley Spencer did such a good job of cataloging the events, explaining what was going on behind the scenes with Disney as a corporation, with its CEOs, with the internal politics, and I just absolutely loved it. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a similar age to me or maybe a little bit younger and grew up watching those shows and those movies. It was great. And then I think my only fiction 5-star this month was Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. This is a fantasy murder mystery that takes place on this ship that is on this voyage, and there are 11 I think people on it who are all heirs to different provinces in this fantasy world, and on the very first night one of them is murdered, and then it becomes a locked room mystery. This was really fun. It was very queer. The narrator had a really distinctive voice, which I really love in fiction, and definitely a chaotic main character. I also love a chaotic disaster main character, especially when it's first person POV, which this was, and I just think it was so fun. A little bit different than a lot of other stuff I read, maybe a little predictable in terms of the murder mystery element. There was a twist in this book that kind of hurt my feelings, and it took me a while to get on board with what the author did to my heart. But at the end of the day, I really liked it and I had a really fun time with it. And I think if you like fantasy murder mysteries, which I'm finding I really, really enjoy. I don't necessarily love a straightforward contemporary murder mystery, but if it's in a historical setting or if it's in a fantasy setting, I really like it. I think it's a really fun time. So those are my highlights of the month. And now we can just get into the game. So first up is Clown in a Cornfield 2, A Magic Steeped in Poison, and Haunt Sweet Home. All right. Excuse me. Let me get myself organized here. What am I doing? Okay. This is actually going to be pretty easy. I'm going to kill Haunt Sweet Home by Sarah Pinsker. This is a horror novella about a woman who is kind of lost in her life and floundering, and her cousin offers her a job as a PA on his reality TV show where they renovate old homes / manufacture hauntings. And so she is part of the team that is going to be manufacturing hauntings, and it's a little bit of a ghost story, a little bit of a haunted house story. Ultimately, I just found this kind of boring and not spooky. I've read Sarah Pinsker before and I know how creepy she can get, and she just didn't go there with this book. I also found the ending very, very disappointing. And kind of saccharine in a way that I did not enjoy. So, yeah, I think I ended up giving it a 3 or 2.75, something in that range, where it wasn't like offensive. It was just very meh. And then I am going to fuck A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy I. Lin. I'm remembering from last month now that I feel weird saying that about YA books. But anyways, this book suffered in that I was reading it when I was really stressed out and distracted this month. And so I remember nothing about what happened. It was so easy to read. I didn't have a hard time reading it. Like, I flew through it, but I just don't remember hardly anything about it. This is a duology. I don't think I'm going to continue just because I wasn't invested. I don't think this is a bad book. I did like the writing. I liked our main character. I wasn't super into the romance, but also, like, I was so distracted when I was reading this. So that's my fault. That's not the book's fault. But I just needed something fun and entertaining to help distract me, and this definitely did this, but it didn't suck me in enough that I was super immersed in what I was reading. But this is about a girl named Ning who basically enters this competition to become the next, like, poison expert for the emperor. So if you like a competition in your books, I would check this out. Again, I really like the writing. I will read more from her because I found her writing so easy to consume. But yeah, like I said, this book just suffered because I was not at my best when I was reading it. I think I gave it a 4, ultimately. So, and then I am going to marry Clown in a Cornfield 2 by Adam Caesar. This is a slasher. It's a YA slasher, and this is book 2, obviously, and we are continuing to follow Quinn, who is our main character from book 1, and after the massacre that occurred on Halloween, around Halloween in book 1, it's a year later. Quinn is trying to settle into college. She's moved away from the small town in Missouri where her dad lives. She's trying to, get acclimated to college, settle in, but Friendo the clown just isn't ready to let go of Quinn. And this is such a fun series so far. I'm really excited that it's a series too. And I'm really excited to read book 3, but I think, if you like slashers, like, I would definitely pick this up, even though it's categorized as YA. Caesar does not back away from the slashing, and it's so fun. It's so fast paced. It's a little creepy. It's a good time. All right, let's do our next 3. Oh, okay. Voyage of the Damned, Bless Your Heart, and Starter Villain. Oh, this one's hard. I liked all of these. Okay, I'm gonna kill Starter Villain by John Scalzi. Not because this wasn't good. I gave this something in the 4-star range. This is about Charlie, who is kind of down on his luck. He's unemployed. He's living rent-free in his deceased father's house because of the estate. He's just kind of lost, and he finds out that his estranged uncle has died and has left Charlie something in his will. And it turns out that his uncle actually had like this super villain organization, and that's what Charlie's inherited. I thought this was really fun. It was funny. It was flippant. It was irreverent. It had some great commentary on our society and on just the way things are structured. I did feel this got a little preachy towards the end, and that John Scalzi got on his soapbox in a way that I didn't feel like was necessary, because I feel like if you pick up this book, John Scalzi's kind of preaching to the choir, but it was still fun. It was entertaining, and it's short, and there's talking cats. So, I mean, really, what more do you need? And then I am going to fuck Bless Your Heart by Lindy Ryan. And this is a contemporary mystery set in Texas about 4 generations of women who own a funeral parlor, and the dead began to rise in their small Texas town. And this one, again, was really fun, fast-paced. I really loved the relationships between the 4 women and how they fought and they loved and they worked together. This book unexpectedly made me weepy at the end, which is why it is a fuck, because I just was not expecting the emotional gut punch, and I just thought this was really well done and fun and like spooky but funny. Like there are horror elements in this. It does get gross. There is body horror. There is a dog, and the dog is okay. Just to let you know going in. I was really worried about the dog for a minute, but dog is fine. Dog is fine. My heart was not fine, but the dog was fine. And then obviously I am going to marry Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. I forgot to mention, this is her debut. And I think this is a really, really solid debut. So I'm excited to see what she's going to do next. I mean, it's not the first time she's written anything, because it's her degree in creative writing. So I'm sure she's written a ton of things, but this is just the first one that has been published. And anyways, I think it's really solid for a debut, and I really loved how delightfully like well represented this book was, or like how delightful the representation in this book was, because there was queer representation, there was all sorts of skin tones, there was disability representation. Like it was so many things that I really like, and it was just a delight. All right. Ooh, we're kind of clipping along on this. That's good, because I got stuff to do today. Can't be spending all this time on my wrap up. Okay, The Best Man's Ghostwriter, Fangs, and The Har. Oh, this one's going to be harder than the last couple of groupings were. Okay, I'm gonna kill Fangs, which I gave like a 4.25. This is a graphic novel about a romance between a vampire and a werewolf. I really liked this. I thought this was very sweet, very funny, very lighthearted, but at the end of the day, probably kind of forgettable. I don't know like how much this will stick with me like as I move along in my reading life, but I really did find it delightful, and I just wasn't prepared for how delightful it was going to be, especially like the moments of like the different type of creatures, what the realities for their life are, and how sometimes they're compatible and sometimes they're not compatible. And just I thought that was really a delightful part of it. And then I'm going to fuck The Best Man's Ghostwriter. I try really hard not to get sucked into the Audible exclusives because I'm just not a fan of that. But apparently my ethics and morals are subject to the whims of Glen Powell. And I caved, and I did like a 99-cent for a month subscription to Audible so I could listen to Glen Powell do this audiobook. It's full cast, but this is about a man who writes best man speeches so that the best men can support their friends and give good speeches and not embarrass themselves or their friends. And then he gets engaged himself and hijinks ensue, and this was really fun. It was short. I am maybe not proud of how I will do anything for Glen Powell, but you know, that's just where I am right now in my life. So. And then I Will Marry the Har by David Sodergren. This is a horror novella that I read actually on Halloween, and it's about this woman named Muriel who lives in this small Scottish town. Muriel is in her 80s. She has lived in this town pretty much her whole life. She lived in her house ever since she and her husband got married, and this American billionaire is trying to bulldoze the whole village to build a golf course. And Muriel doesn't want to go and doesn't want to give up her home with all her memories. So this is creature horror, this is revenge horror, this is eat the rich type of horror, and I really loved it. I would say the audiobook is definitely the way to go. The narrator was like top tier. She did such an amazing job, and I don't know if I would have loved this as much if I had just read it with my eyeballs. So I highly recommend it on audio. It was so good. Definitely like one of the best horror books I've read this year. All right, next, Homecoming, Guillotine, which I think I had to take back to the library, and The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Okay, well, I'm going to kill Mercy Thompson, Homecoming. This is a graphic novel prequel to the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. This is urban paranormal fantasy, and I liked it. I like the story. I like the characters. I'm interested to go and check out the novels for this series. I didn't love the art style in this. It was a little too like classic comic book aesthetic. So like Mercy's really skinny but has really big boobs, and I just like, meh. It just didn't feel, I don't know. I just didn't care for the art style. But I am interested in trying out the other series. This is kind of like a prequel story to the main series. And then I am going to, I guess, fuck Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson, though this isn't my favorite of her books. This is also kind of a like eat the rich revenge horror, but we're following this woman who is wanting to get into the fashion industry and just can't catch a break, and in order to try to get ahead, she decides to date this really horrible guy whose mom is really influential in the fashion industry, and with the hope of like she'll get to meet his mom, and that will give her a leg up in her career. And then she finagles an invitation to the family's private estate for Easter weekend, and hijinks ensue. I guess this was my favorite. I really loved the beginning. The kills were really creative. I didn't care for the ending. I really wanted her to go there with the ending and for the ending to be like really outlandish and dramatic, and it was kind of just like wah wah, which is too bad. So I still gave this something in the 4 range, but it's definitely not as impactful as Bloom was, and I will probably forget about this one as time goes by, but it was fine. And then I guess I'm going to marry The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. That feels weird. Oh my gosh, the light keeps changing. It's kind of overcast day here today, so sun's trying. This is YA fantasy about all these girls / women who are the daughters of famous literary Gothic characters. So our main character is Mary. She's the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, and she is trying to solve a mystery that her mother left behind when she died. Sherlock and Watson are characters in this. We also have like the daughter of Frankenstein or of Frankenstein's monster, and we have the daughter of Mr. Hyde. And anyways, it was really fun, and I'm probably going to continue on with the series because I did really like this. My beloved Kate Redding does the audiobook, so I definitely will continue on with the audio. But I thought this was, like, the storytelling is really fun because you're being told the story of how these women all came together to become friends. And so there's one who's writing it, but then the others like interject their opinions when they feel like they're not being represented accurately. Anyways, it was a great time. Cannot remember what I rated it, but that's okay. I'm continuing on this with the series. What more do you need to know? All right, and then our next trio is Graveyard Shift. We Do Not Welcome Our 10-Year-Old Overlord. And Aristotle and Dante Dive Into the Waters of the World. This one's hard. I didn't love any of these. Okay, I'm gonna kill Graveyard Shift because, again, I thought this was boring. This is another, I don't know if it's horror or if it's mystery, but it's a novella, and it's these 5 or 6 people who meet in a graveyard every night for their smoke breaks. And one night when they get there, there is a hole in the graveyard that's not supposed to be there. Premise is weak. I felt like this is such a short novella, and each character gets a perspective, and I feel like it was too short to have that many people. I also wasn't really interested into the mystery. I didn't feel like the atmosphere was very good. There wasn't any tension. It was just kind of boring and kind of meh, and at the end of it, I just kind of wondered what the point of reading that book was, and I just didn't enjoy it. And then I'm going to, I guess, smooch Aristotle and Dante Dive Into the Waters of the World. This is book 2 in the Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe series, if that's what it's called. And we're just following Aristotle and Dante as they navigate their senior year of high school and what it means to be gay men in the late 1980s, and their family, and figuring out their identities and just what their lives are going to be like. I found this kind of overwritten, and there's a big disconnect for me because I felt like we were handling some really heavy, serious topics and themes in this book, like racism, homophobia, grief, but then the language was so poetic and earnest that it felt like the language felt so unrealistic. And so I had kind of a disconnect of like, we were dealing with really real things, but the language felt so idealized. It just didn't work for me. And then I guess I'm gonna marry We Do Not Welcome Our 10-Year-Old Overlord, even though, again, I didn't love this. This is a new middle grade book by Garth Nix, and mostly I'm marrying this because of my love for Garth Nix. He has been one of my favorite authors for a very, very long time, and I think this is a fine middle grade. This is sci-fi about a brother, Kim, who went out walking with his best friend, and their sisters find what they think is a severed head in the lake, and when they pull it out, they realize it's actually like this orb, and his sister takes this orb home, and hijinks ensue. How many times can I work that in to a review? This was really a love letter to D&D, and I feel like sometimes like Garth Nix's desire to highlight D&D kind of overtook the actual plot. So that's why, like, I thought it was really fun. I really liked the characters. I wanted the ending, again, to be a little bit more punchy than it was. It kind of fizzled at the end, which I think is maybe like the theme that I'm realizing for all these books right now. I am, of course, still a Garth Nix fan and will continue to read Garth Nix books because I think most of the time he really hits for me. All right. Our next ones are going to be The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, The Dagger and the Flame, and, The Night Guest. Okay, this one's actually going to be easy too. I'm going to Kill the Night Guest by Hildur Nutsdatter. This is horror, psychological horror, which I have realized I don't think I'm a psychological horror fan because this just didn't do anything for me. I really wanted to love this. I thought I was going to love this. But this is about a woman who is like constantly fatigued and waking up with bruises on her body, and there's no explanation, and the doctors don't have an answer. And every time she tries to like lock herself in or do something to stop herself from like sleepwalking, she wakes up in the morning with more injuries on her body, or like there's some sort of physical consequence for her trying to stop herself. And so it's her trying to figure out what the heck is going on. thought this had the potential to be so creepy, and again, the ending just fizzled out for me, and I found it kind of boring. So, yep, there's that. Why are endings in horror so hard? And then I am going to Fuck the Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle. This is book 1 in a new YA romantasy series, and this was really fun. It was a good time. A little predictable, but that's okay because I had a lot of fun reading it. It also is a little on the long side, but I just thought this was so fun. This is about Sarah, whose mother is murdered, and so she runs into the city and takes sanctuary with the Cloaks, which is this guild of thieves. And the Cloaks are at odds with this other group called the Daggers, which are a guild of assassins. And of course, there is a dagger named Ransom who is the heir to the guild, and he is tasked with killing Sarah. And I'm sure you can imagine what they do instead. And I really like this. Fun time. Again, I'm just kind of starting to dip my toes into romantasy, so I'm still getting like a taste or an idea of what the conventions are, what the tropes are, what is stereotypical, what's maybe a little bit more original, but I thought this was really fun. A little steamy for YA, if I'm being honest. I feel like this should be new adult because the couple of steamy scenes we got were pretty explicit, but no, that's a conversation we can have another time. And then of course I'm going to marry The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which you've already heard me talk about, so this was just such a good book. Such a good book. All right, next, how do I still have books to talk about? We have Dear Sylvia, Love Jane, Disney High, and Dial A for Aunties. Okay, I'm going to kill Dial A for Aunties. I did not love this, obviously. I was pitched this as like a fun, rompy murder mystery. I found this really stressful. This was not fun. This stressed me out because our main character was stressed out and was not having a good time, as she shouldn't when she's trying to like figure out a murder. But I just found this way too stressful. I was kind of expecting similar vibes as Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, which I read earlier this year and loved, but no, not the same vibes. Also, I didn't really like our main character. I didn't like how she talked to like her mom or her aunties, or how she treated the love interest. Like, I felt like the love interest deserved better. Oh, this is about Maddie, who gets tricked into going on a blind date by her mom and her aunties, and then accidentally murders her date when he turns out to be a giant creep, and then calls her mom and her aunties to help her cover up the murder. And of course, this is the same weekend as this like multi-million-dollar wedding that they are in charge of organizing. But yeah, it wasn't fun. It was just stressful, and I am not going to be continuing on with this series. And then I guess I'm going to fuck Dear Sylvia, Love Jane by Erin Hall. This is a detective noir sapphic murder mystery. It's set in San Francisco in 1943, and we're following Molly Malone, who is a private investigator, and she is investigating this rash of break-ins into underground queer bars in the city. And I liked it for the most part. The ending did feel a little bit rushed, and the bad guys did feel a little cartoonish at the end, but I am definitely going to read more in this series as more books come out. I know Erin is working on book 2 right now, so I will definitely pick up the next one in this series. And then, of course, I'm going to marry Disney High because it was so good. It's my favorite. My perfect, like, wheelhouse of nonfiction. Okay, we are on our last grouping. Let's see if I can do this before my battery dies. All right, we have Magical Realism, The Anatomist's Wife, and Clever Girl. Oh, this one's going to be hard. Okay. I don't like any of my choices. Okay. What do I want to marry? Okay, I'm going to marry Clever Girl by Hannah McGregor. This is like a micro nonfiction essay about Jurassic Park specifically, and how the movie can be read as a classic feminist text. And I love this so much. I highlighted the bejesus out of it. I absolutely adore Hannah McGregor. I listen to her podcast, Material Girls, and I just love how her brain works and the things she has to say. And I thought this was really excellent. If you love Jurassic Park and you love feminism, like, it's a perfect intersection. I love this, so we'll definitely be marrying this. I'm gonna Fuck the Anatomist's Wife by Anna Lee Huber. This is the first book in the Lady Darby mystery series. This is a historical mystery series about, God, what's her name? Kira, who is a widow, and her husband was an anatomist and forced Kira to be his assistant during dissections? Anatomies? No, what's the word? Dang, I can't remember. Anyways, basically forced her into it, and of course when he died it came out that she was present at these autopsies. That's the word. Autopsies. And of course society blames Kira and thinks she's unnatural. And then there is a murder at her brother-in-law's estate while they're having a house party, and he and Kira's sister ask her to help the local inspector. No, it's something else, because inquiry agent, yeah, I love that. Love that word. Help the local inquiry agent try to solve the murder. And it was great. I love a historical mystery, as you know, and I loved the start of the romance in this, and I'm going to try really hard to continue on with the series, because this was a reread for me so that I could finally pick up and continue with the series. And then this is on the kill stack, but I need you to know that I really liked this. Magical realism is also nonfiction, and it's essays on music, memory, fantasy, and borders. And I really like this. Again, I highlighted a ton of stuff in this book, but this is a memoir where the author is relating certain events in her life back to the pop culture that was influencing her at the time. And I really like this. This did get sad and heavy, so it took me a really long time to read because I would take breaks, but I really love memoir that is related back to pop culture, especially when it's pop culture where the author and I have similar experiences. There is also a lot of pop culture in here that I just didn't experience at the time, and so that was interesting to hear her experiences with certain music or movies or like pop culture icons. And I really, really like this, even though it's on the kill stack. So there you have it, friends. That is everything that I read in October. Again, it was kind of in mid-month. I think we learned through me talking about all these books that the endings really lost it for me on a lot of these books. And I just wanted authors who are really, I wanted people to go there with their endings, to take a risk, to do something that would be impactful instead of just like wah, wah. And unfortunately I got a lot of those wah, wah endings instead of the punchy ones. But I'd love to hear what you read in October, or if you have any thoughts about anything I read this month or last month. I would love to hear those thoughts as well. Go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. If you would like to leave an emoji to let me know you are here, let's do a flame emoji, and like it if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll talk to you in the next one, and my camera's gonna die. Bye!